Greg Morrison sat in the human delegation section and watched another council session fall apart. The Xanthari ambassador was talking again, his voice filled with the same contempt Greg had heard for 5 years. The tall alien gestured at the human proposal on the display screen and laughed. Primitive safety protocols, Ambassador Thelkara said. The humans want us to install redundant systems throughout the station. They claim our elegant designs are dangerous. This is typical Deathworlder paranoia. The other delegates made sounds of agreement. The Kvalesh representative added her own comment about how humans wasted resources on unnecessary backups. Greg said nothing. He had learned that defending human methods only made things worse. Chancellor Vorshan, the council leader, dismissed the human proposal with a wave of his hand. We will move to the next item, he said. The trade dispute between the Threll and the Mekthar. Greg pulled out his datapad and made a note. That was the 47th human proposal rejected this year. He looked around the chamber at the dozens of alien species, all convinced of their own superiority. None of them noticed the small things that kept their council running. After the session ended, Greg walked through the station corridors. He passed the infrastructure control room where Lisa Chen was working. She looked tired. Her team had been working double shifts to keep the fusion reactor stable. The alien engineers who designed it had made it efficient but fragile. One small problem could cascade into a meltdown. Lisa had been quietly fixing design flaws for 3 years. Another long day? Greg asked. Lisa glanced up from her screens. The cooling system almost failed again. I had to bypass 3 circuits and reroute the flow. The Xanthari engineers still insist their design is perfect. Did you file a report? I file one every week. Nobody reads them. Lisa rubbed her eyes. Greg, I am tired. I am so tired of being ignored. Greg understood. He felt the same exhaustion in his bones. I know. He continued walking and found Kevin Park in the medical center. The human doctor was treating a Kvalesh patient who had been exposed to a biohazard. Kevin wore a full protective suit. The alien doctors stood far back, unwilling to risk exposure. Thank you, Dr. Park, the patient said weakly. The others would not come near me. Kevin checked the vital signs. You will be fine. The treatment is working. Rest now. After the patient fell asleep, Kevin removed his protective gear and joined Greg in the hallway. That is the 3rd outbreak this month, Kevin said. I keep telling them to improve their containment procedures, but they say humans are too cautious. Let me guess. They did not read your report. They never do. Kevin leaned against the wall. We come from a world where diseases killed millions. We learn to take every threat seriously. They think we are paranoid. Greg walked back to his office and sat down. His datapad showed 73 unread messages. Most were from other human personnel across council space. Engineers, doctors, security officers, logistics coordinators, teachers, mediators. All of them shared the same story. Their expertise was dismissed. Their warnings were ignored. Their contributions were invisible. He opened a message from Tyler Brooks, the human security chief. Greg, I need to talk to you. The alien security teams are not following the patrol protocols. I have tried to explain why we set them up this way, but they call it excessive. We are going to have a major incident soon. Another message came from Ashley Park, the trade coordinator. The Threll and Mekthar are about to start a shipping war. I have been mediating their disputes for 2 years, but the council just assigned a Xanthari arbitrator who knows nothing about their history. This will end badly. Greg read through more messages. Nicole Roth reported that supply chain failures were increasing. Danny Lee said the translation systems were degrading. Emma White warned about structural stress in the station's outer ring. All of them were being ignored. Greg made a decision. He composed a message and encrypted it with a code that only humans would recognize. He sent it to every human working for the Galactic Council. The message was simple. It is time to go home. Over the next week, humans across council space began packing. They submitted formal resignation letters. They were polite and professional. When aliens asked why they were leaving, they gave diplomatic answers about pursuing other opportunities. Nobody argued, nobody complained. They simply prepared to leave. Lisa Chen handed her duties to Danny Foster, a Zenthari engineer. She spent 2 days showing him the systems, explaining the modifications she had made, pointing out the problems he would need to monitor. Danny barely paid attention. He kept saying the human changes were unnecessarily complex. "The reactor is stable now," Danny said. "I do not see why you needed all these redundancies." Lisa did not argue. "Good luck," she said. Kevin Park trained Dr. Veltran to handle the biohazard protocols. The alien doctor was skilled but cautious. He did not want to work with dangerous pathogens. "Humans have strong immune systems," Dr. Veltran said. "My species is more vulnerable. Perhaps we should limit exposure situations." Kevin thought about explaining that limiting exposure meant letting outbreaks spread, but he was too tired. "You will figure it out," he said. Tyler Brooks tried to transfer his security knowledge to the new chief, a Threll officer who thought human methods were too aggressive. The Threll preferred minimal patrols and reactive responses. Tyler showed him the data on prevented incidents, but the officer dismissed it as coincidence. Across the station and throughout council space, the same scene repeated. Humans handed over their responsibilities to aliens who were certain they could do better. The council barely noticed. A few species made comments about finally being free of Deathworlder influence. Chancellor Vorshan gave a speech about the council's bright future, without primitive species holding them back. The last human transport left council space on a Tuesday morning. Greg stood at the viewport and watched the station grow smaller. Beside him, Lisa, Kevin, and Tyler stood in silence. "Do you think they will be okay?" Lisa asked. Greg did not answer right away. He thought about all the systems Lisa had kept running, all the outbreaks Kevin had prevented, all the attacks Tyler had stopped before they happened. He thought about the thousands of small problems that humans had solved quietly, without recognition or thanks. "No," he said finally, "but we tried to warn them." The transport jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, Council Station continued its normal operations. In the infrastructure control room, warning lights began flashing. The climate control system showed temperature fluctuations. The database backup failed its routine check. Nobody noticed yet. The problems were small. But small problems ignored become big problems eventually. Danny Foster stared at the control panels in confusion. 3 systems were showing errors that made no sense. He tried to fix one, and 2 more alarms activated. He pulled up Lisa's documentation, but the modifications she described seemed illogical. Why would anyone design systems this way? In the medical center, Dr. Veltran received a report about contaminated supplies in the lower levels. Standard procedure called for a quarantine team to investigate, but the humans who usually handled such things were gone. He would need to send his own people, but who would volunteer? Tyler's replacement discovered that patrol schedules were not random. They were carefully timed to prevent incidents in specific areas at specific times. Without understanding the pattern, the new chief simplified the schedule. It was more efficient. He felt proud of the improvement. In the council chamber, Ambassador Thel Kara gave another speech. He talked about progress and advancement. He did not mention humans at all. As far as he was concerned, they had never mattered. On Earth, Greg Morrison read reports from the automated monitoring systems humans had left behind. He watched the data streams showing small failures multiplying. He felt sad but not surprised. "They will call us back," Lisa said, reading over his shoulder. "Maybe," Greg said, "but only after things get much worse." He closed the datapad and looked out at the blue planet below. Earth. The death world that had forged humanity into survivors. The world that taught them to plan for disasters, to build backups for backups, to never assume safety. The Galactic Council thought those lessons made humans primitive. They were about to learn differently. 3 weeks after the last human left council space, the first real problems began to show. Danny Foster stood in the infrastructure control room and stared at a screen full of red warnings. The translation system was failing. Not completely, just enough to cause confusion. Zenthari words were being translated into Kvalesh with slightly wrong meanings. Simple misunderstandings were creating diplomatic incidents. He had been trying to fix it for 6 hours. Every time he corrected one error, 3 more appeared. The system architecture made no sense to him. Lisa Chen had modified it with layers of redundancy that seemed wasteful. Danny had tried to streamline it, to make it more elegant. That was when everything started breaking. "This is impossible," he muttered. "Human engineering is chaotic." His assistant, a young Threll technician, looked up from another console. "Sir, the climate control in the eastern wing is fluctuating again. Temperature has dropped 5 degrees in the last hour." Danny pulled up the climate system. More human modifications, more redundant backups, more inexplicable design choices. He made a few adjustments based on standard engineering principles. The temperature stabilized for 10 minutes. Then it spiked 8 degrees above normal. Alarms started blaring. Delegates in the eastern wing began complaining. Danny scrambled to fix it, but he could not understand what was wrong. The system should work. His changes were logical and efficient. What he did not understand was that Lisa had designed the system to expect Earth-level chaos, storms, earthquakes, power surges, equipment failures. The redundancies were not waste. They were insurance against a universe that loved to break things. In the medical center, Dr. Veltran faced his own crisis. A minor plague had broken out in the lower levels. 3 species were showing symptoms. Standard procedure called for immediate quarantine and biohazard response, but the biohazard team was gone. Kevin Park had led it personally. The human doctor had treated every outbreak like it could become a pandemic. His team had worn full protective gear for even minor exposures. Other species had mocked them for it. Now Dr. Veltran needed volunteers to enter the contaminated area. None of his staff wanted to go. They were all from worlds with limited disease exposure. Their immune systems were weak. The risk seemed too high. "We need to contain this now," Dr. Veltran said, "before it spreads." His chief nurse, a Mekthar, shook her head. "Doctor, we do not have the proper training. The humans handled all dangerous containment. We should seal the area and wait for the contamination to die down naturally. That could take weeks. People are sick now. Then we treat them remotely. Send in medical drones." Dr. Veltran wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. None of them had the skills or courage to do what Kevin had done routinely. He authorized the drone deployment and hoped it would be enough. It was not enough. The plague continued spreading. In the security office, the new chief faced problems he did not expect. Pirate attacks on council shipping had increased by 40% in 3 weeks. Ships were being hit in sectors that had been safe for years. The Threll security chief reviewed Tyler Brooks's old patrol schedules. They were complex, with ships moving in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated. Tyler had studied pirate behavior for years. He knew where they would strike and when. The new chief had simplified everything. Patrols were now evenly distributed and predictable. It was more efficient on paper. The pirates loved it. They could predict where security ships would be and strike where they were not. "We need more ships," the security chief told Chancellor Vorshan. The humans were lucky. "We need actual resources." The Chancellor approved funding for 10 more patrol vessels. It would take months to build them. Meanwhile, the attacks continued. Ambassador Krisha, a Kvalish counselor, started noticing patterns. She was one of the few who had actually worked with humans regularly. She had not always agreed with them, but she had respected their thoroughness. Now she saw their absence everywhere. Small disputes that humans had mediated were escalating. The Threll and Mekthar shipping conflict had erupted into actual combat. 2 cargo vessels had been destroyed. Hundreds were dead. She pulled up the records and found dozens of messages from Ashley Park, the human trade coordinator. Ashley had been warning about this exact conflict for months. She had proposed solutions. Every proposal had been ignored. Krisha went to the Chancellor's office. "We have a serious problem," she said. Vorshan looked annoyed. "I am aware of the Threll Mekthar situation. We have assigned an arbitrator. That is not what I mean. The humans were handling dozens of conflicts like this. Now they are all erupting at once. Then we will handle them as we always have. Through proper diplomatic channels. The humans were the diplomatic channels. They did the work nobody else wanted to do. The Chancellor waved dismissively. Ambassador. We managed for thousands of years before humans joined the Council. We will manage now. Krisha left the office unconvinced. She started reviewing Council records more carefully. What she found disturbed her. Humans had filed over 3,000 incident reports in the past 5 years. Each report documented a problem they had prevented or solved. Equipment failures, disease outbreaks, security breaches, diplomatic disputes, logistics failures. Most of them were marked as minor issues, but they were not minor. They were small problems that could have become catastrophic without intervention. And every single report ended with the same note. Recommendation ignored by Council leadership. She found Lisa Chen's reports about the fusion reactor. The human engineer had been preventing a meltdown every few months. Her modifications had made the reactor truly stable for the first time in its history. The Zenthari engineers had called her paranoid. She found Kevin Park's outbreak reports. He had contained 17 potential pandemics. Some could have killed millions. The medical board had called his protocols excessive. She found Tyler Brooks's security assessments. He had prevented 43 major attacks. His methods had been called aggressive and unnecessary. The pattern was clear. Humans had been holding the Council together. Nobody had noticed because they did their work quietly, without demanding recognition. Krisha tried to contact Earth. She sent a formal message requesting consultation on several urgent matters. She was polite and respectful. The response came back within an hour. Earth is not currently accepting communications from the Galactic Council. Thank you for your inquiry. She tried again, explaining the severity of the situation. Same response. 2 months after the humans left, the Council's main database crashed. Decades of records became inaccessible. Trade agreements, treaty negotiations, historical archives, all gone. Danny Foster was called to fix it. He discovered that the database had backup systems, but they were encrypted. The encryption was human-designed, using security protocols that were supposed to be excessive and paranoid. Now they were unbreakable. Can you override it? Chancellor Vorshan demanded. No, Danny admitted. The humans built this with too many security layers. I would need the access codes, then get them from the humans. They are not responding to our messages. Chancellor. The room fell silent. For the first time, Council leadership began to understand the scope of the problem. Meanwhile, on Earth, Greg Morrison sat in a cafe in Geneva and read the news feeds from Council space. Lisa sat across from him, watching the same reports. The reactor is starting to fail, she said. They have maybe 2 months before serious problems. The plague in the lower levels is spreading, Kevin added, joining them with coffee. They sealed the area but did not properly contain it. It will reach the main population centers soon. Tyler pulled up a chair. Pirate attacks are getting worse. They lost another convoy yesterday. The new security chief has no idea what he is doing. Nicole Roth scrolled through economic data. Their trade networks are collapsing. Shipping is down 50%. Several member species are talking about leaving the Council. Greg said nothing. He just listened to his friends catalog the disasters. He felt no satisfaction. Just deep, tired sadness. Should we help? Lisa asked. Did they ask? Greg replied. Krisha tried to contact us. She seems to understand what is happening. One person understanding is not enough. The whole Council needs to learn this lesson. People are dying, Greg. I know. He closed his eyes. People were always dying. We tried to tell them how to prevent it. They would not listen. Back on Council Station, Ambassador Thelkara stood in his quarters and watched the news. The Zenthari homeworld was reporting strange weather patterns. Their climate control satellites were malfunctioning. The satellites had been maintained by a human technical team. His people had sent their own engineers to fix the problem. They could not figure out the human modifications. The satellites continued failing. For the first time in his long life, Thelkara felt genuine fear. He had dismissed humans as primitive. He had laughed at their caution and their redundancy. Now he understood. Earth was a world that tried to kill its inhabitants every day. Humans had learned to survive through preparation and planning. They built backups because they knew from experience that everything eventually failed. The Galactic Council had built a civilization on the assumption that nothing would go wrong. That assumption was now proving fatal. 4 months after humanity's departure, Council Station entered a state of emergency. The fusion reactor that powered everything finally showed its true instability. Danny Foster stood in the reactor control room at 3 in the morning, watching radiation levels climb into the danger zone. Alarms screamed. Emergency protocols activated automatically. Protocols that Lisa Chen had installed and the Zenthari engineers had called unnecessary. Those unnecessary protocols were now the only thing preventing a complete meltdown. "We need to shut down the reactor," Danny's assistant said, his voice shaking. "If we shut it down, the station loses power," Danny replied. "Life support fails. Everyone dies. If we do not shut it down, the reactor explodes. Everyone dies anyway." Danny pulled up Lisa's maintenance logs. She had documented every modification, every fix, every workaround. Her notes were detailed and clear. But they referenced concepts Danny had never studied. Human engineering philosophy was built on different principles. The Zenthari designed for efficiency. Humans designed for survival. He found a note Lisa had written 6 months before she left. "Reactor core has fundamental design flaw in cooling system. Designers prioritized elegant energy flow over thermal management. Have implemented emergency cooling bypass. Must be manually activated if primary system fails. See attached diagram." Danny found the diagram. It showed a cooling system that seemed to violate every rule of proper engineering. Pipes ran in strange loops. Redundant pumps sat in illogical positions. The whole design looked chaotic, but it was the only option left. "Activate the bypass system," Danny ordered. His team scrambled to follow the human design procedures. The cooling system engaged. For a terrifying minute, nothing changed. Then the radiation levels began dropping. Slowly, the reactor stabilized. Danny sat down heavily. They had avoided disaster. For now. But the reactor was deteriorating faster than he could repair it. They needed someone who understood these systems. They needed Lisa Chen. In the medical center, Dr. Veltran faced a nightmare. The plague had escaped containment and spread to the main residential areas. Dozens of species were showing symptoms. The death toll was climbing. He had tried everything: quarantine zones, medical drones, remote treatment. Nothing worked as well as direct intervention, but his staff refused to enter contaminated areas without the training Kevin Park had provided. "We are doctors," Dr. Veltran shouted at his senior team. "We took oaths to help the sick, and we cannot help anyone if we die," his chief nurse replied. "The humans had natural resistance to disease. We do not." Kevin came from the same death world that created these plagues. He still went into every contaminated zone personally. "That proves humans are crazy, not brave." Dr. Veltran wanted to scream. Instead, he reviewed Kevin's old training materials. The human doctor had documented everything: proper protective procedures, decontamination protocols, psychological preparation for working in biohazard conditions. It was not just about equipment. Kevin had understood that fear was the real enemy. He had trained his teams to control their fear, to focus on the work, to remember that every patient was someone's family. Dr. Veltran realized he could learn the procedures, but he could not teach that mindset. Not in time to save the thousands now at risk. Chancellor Vorshan received reports that shook him to his core. 20 species had formally withdrawn from the council. They cited failing infrastructure, inadequate security, and economic collapse. More species were considering departure. The council that had stood for 8,000 years was falling apart in months. He called an emergency session. The chamber was half empty. Many delegates had returned to their homeworlds to deal with local crises. Those who remained looked frightened and angry. "We face unprecedented challenges," Vorshan began. "We face the consequences of our arrogance," Ambassador Krisha interrupted. She stood and faced the chamber. "I have spent the past month reviewing our records," the humans warned us. "About everything. The reactor instability, the disease protocols, the security gaps, the economic vulnerabilities. They documented every problem and proposed solutions. We ignored every warning. The humans were junior members," Thelkara said weakly. "Their methods were primitive. Their methods kept us alive." Krisha shot back. "While we debated and congratulated ourselves on our superiority, they did the actual work of maintaining our civilization." She pulled up files on the main display. Thousands of incident reports scrolled past. Lisa Chen prevented 17 reactor failures. Kevin Park contained 19 outbreaks. Tyler Brooks stopped 43 attacks. Ashley Park mediated hundreds of trade disputes. Nicole Roth coordinated supply chains across 70 systems. Danny Lee maintained our communications. Emma White monitored structural integrity. These are just the humans I have records for. There were hundreds more doing work we never acknowledged. The chamber was silent. They asked for nothing except respect. We could not even give them that. Thelkara stood slowly. "What do you propose?" "Ambassador. We contact Earth. We apologize. We beg them to help us. And if they refuse?" Krisha looked around the nearly empty chamber. "Then the Galactic Council ends. Not with war or conquest, but with simple collapse because we were too proud to value the people who held us together." The vote was unanimous. Krisha would lead a delegation to Earth. On the Zenthari homeworld, Ambassador Thelkara received word that his family was in danger. The plague that Kevin Park had contained the previous year had returned. Without human medical teams and their aggressive treatment protocols, it was spreading across 3 continents. Millions were infected. Hospitals were overwhelmed. The Zenthari medical system, efficient and elegant, was designed for normal conditions. It could not handle a crisis of this scale. Thelkara watched news footage of his people suffering and felt shame burn through him. He had called Kevin Park paranoid for his extreme safety measures. He had mocked the human doctor's insistence on worst-case planning. Now his people were dying because nobody had planned for the worst. He recorded a personal message and sent it to Earth. It was addressed to Kevin Park. "Dr. Park, I am told you may not read this. I understand if you do not. I write anyway because I must. I called you paranoid. I dismissed your warnings. I laughed at your protocols. My people are now dying of a plague you contained easily last year. I have no right to ask, but I am asking anyway. Please help us. Not because we deserve it, but because you are a doctor and we are dying. I am sorry. For everything." He sent the message and waited. No response came. Tyler Brooks watched security reports from his office in New York. Council space had become a war zone. Pirates operated openly. 3 minor species had been conquered by aggressive neighbors. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries were now deadly. "They are dying out there," his assistant said. Tyler nodded grimly. "They are dying because they thought security was something you could do halfway. You cannot. Either you prepare for the worst, or the worst happens. Should we help? They have not asked. Not officially. Krisha is coming to Earth. One person understanding is not enough. The whole leadership needs to understand." Lisa Chen stood in the reactor control facility on Earth and watched data from Council Station. The reactor was in critical condition. Danny Foster was doing his best, but he did not have the training. The fusion core would fail completely within weeks. When it failed, everyone on that station would die. "I can fix it," she said quietly. Greg Morrison, standing beside her, shook his head. "They have not asked. People will die, Greg. People are always dying because the Council refuses to listen to experts. If we save them now, nothing changes. They need to understand what we did for them. They need to understand the cost of dismissing expertise. When does the lesson end? How many have to die?" Greg looked at his friend with tired eyes. "I do not know. But I know that saving them without making them understand will just restart the same cycle. They will be grateful for a month, then go back to ignoring us. Lisa wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Still, watching people suffer because of leadership's failures felt wrong. Maybe some of them understand now, she said. Maybe. We will find out when Krisha arrives. The Kvalesh ambassador's ship entered Earth's solar system 3 days later. It was a small vessel, not the grand diplomatic cruiser that protocol demanded. Krisha had come with minimal ceremony because she understood this was not a normal diplomatic mission. She was coming to beg. Her ship landed in Geneva. A small group met her. Greg Morrison, Lisa Chen, Kevin Park, Tyler Brooks, Nicole Roth, and a few other senior human former council personnel. No grand reception, no formal ceremony, just tired people meeting in a simple conference room. Krisha entered and saw the humans waiting. They looked exhausted. Not from recent work, but from years of being ignored and dismissed. She understood that look. It was the face of people who had given everything and received nothing in return. "Thank you for seeing me," she began. "We almost did not," Greg said honestly. "We are tired, Ambassador. Tired of not being heard." "I know. I understand. And I am sorry." The room was quiet. "The council is falling apart," Krisha continued. "People are dying. Systems are failing. Everything you warned us about is happening. We were fools, arrogant fools who mistook your patience for weakness and your caution for primitivism." She placed a datapad on the table. "These are formal requests for assistance. The reactor, the plague, the security failures, the economic collapse. We need help with all of it." "Why should we help?" Lisa asked. "Every time we tried to help before, we were ignored. Because people are dying who did not dismiss you. Children, families, workers who never had power in the council. They are suffering for leadership's mistakes." It was Kevin who spoke next. "What about my protocols? The ones you called excessive? We will implement every one, exactly as you designed them." "The reactor modifications I proposed?" Lisa asked. "Approved. All of them." "My security procedures?" Tyler added. "We will follow them completely." Greg leaned forward. "Words are easy, Ambassador. The Council has made promises before and broken them. Why should we believe you?" "So," Krisha met his eyes. "Because I cannot promise anything except that we have learned. Some of us have learned. I cannot speak for the entire Council, but I can promise that I will fight for you to have real authority, real respect, real power to implement your expertise." She paused. "And I can tell you that if you do not help, the Council ends. Thousands of years of cooperation and peace, gone. Not because of war, but because we were too proud to value the people who made it all work." Quote, "The humans looked at each other. A silent conversation passed between them. Greg Morrison stood and walked to the window. Outside, Geneva sparkled in the afternoon sun. Earth, the death world that had forged humanity into survivors. He thought about all the times he had sat in the council chamber, watching his proposals get dismissed. He thought about Lisa's exhaustion, Kevin's frustration, Tyler's warnings ignored. He turned back to Ambassador Krisha. "Before we discuss helping, you need to understand something. We did not leave because we were angry. We left because we were broken. Years of having our expertise dismissed, our warnings ignored, our contributions invisible. We gave everything, and it was never enough." Krisha nodded slowly. "I know. I have read the reports. All of them. Then you understand why we cannot just come back and fix everything. That solves nothing. The Council needs to change. Fundamentally. What do you want?" The question hung in the air. Lisa spoke first. "I want my maintenance schedules to be mandatory, not optional. When I say a system needs repair, it gets repaired. Not debated, not delayed. Done," Kevin added. "I want full authority over disease control. If I declare a quarantine, it happens immediately. No committee votes. No political considerations. Public health is not negotiable. Tyler leaned forward. I want security protocols followed completely. No shortcuts because they seem excessive. No exceptions for important people. Everyone follows the same rules. Nicole pulled up economic data. I want human oversight on all major trade agreements. We saw patterns others missed because we looked for problems instead of assuming success. Greg returned to the table. We want voting authority equal to founding species. We want our expertise respected and implemented. We want to be partners, not servants. Krisha was quiet for a long moment. Those demands will be difficult. Many species still believe humans are junior members. Then those species can leave the council, Greg said flatly. Or they can stay and accept reality. But we will not return as second-class members. Never again. I will take your terms to the remaining council leadership. You do that. Meanwhile, we will monitor the situation. If things get worse, if more people die unnecessarily, the window for negotiation closes. Krisha stood to leave, then paused. May I ask a question? Go ahead. Why did you help for so long? Despite the dismissal, the disrespect, the ingratitude. Why did you keep working? Kevin answered. Because people were suffering. We are doctors, engineers, protectors. We see a problem. We fix it. That is what humans do. Even when it costs you everything, especially then. After Krisha left, the humans sat in silence. Finally, Tyler spoke. Do you think they will accept our terms? They have to, Lisa said. They are out of options. That does not mean they will be happy about it, Nicole added. Some species will rather watch the council burn than admit humans are their equals. Greg pulled up news feeds from council space. The situation continued deteriorating. The reactor was days from critical failure. The plague had spread to 12 species. Pirate attacks had increased another 40%. Economic activity was down 70% from pre-departure levels. How many more will die while they decide? Lisa asked quietly. However many it takes for them to learn, Greg replied. I hate that answer, but it is the truth. On council station, Chancellor Vorshan received Krisha's report. She presented the human demands to the Emergency Leadership Council. The room erupted. Unacceptable, shouted the Mechthar representative. Humans cannot have voting equality with species who founded the council. The humans did not found the council, Thelkara said quietly, but they kept it running. Is pride worth dying for? This is not about pride. It is about proper order. Krisha slammed her hand on the table. The proper order has failed. Our station is dying. Our people are dying. Our entire civilization is collapsing. The humans offered to help if we treat them as equals. That is not an unreasonable demand. They are Deathworlders, primitive and violent. They are the people who prevented this disaster for years while we ignored them. Primitive people do not build systems so sophisticated we cannot understand them. Violent people do not spend years mediating peace when they could impose it by force. Vorshan raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Krisha is correct. We have no leverage. The humans hold all the expertise we need. If we refuse their terms, the council ends. Then perhaps it should end, the Mechthar representative said. Better a dignified conclusion than surrender to Deathworlders. There is no dignity in death by pride. Thelkara replied. My people are dying of a plague that Dr. Park contained easily last year. I would trade every bit of dignity for his help. The debate continued for hours. Finally, Vorshan called for a vote. The human proposal passed with a narrow margin. 63% in favor. Many species abstained. Some voted against and immediately declared their intention to leave the council. The council was now smaller, weaker, and desperate. But it had made a choice. Krisha sent the results to Earth. Your terms are accepted. Please, help us. Greg read the message aloud to the assembled humans. Around the room, reactions varied. Some felt vindicated. Others felt sad that it had come to this. None felt triumphant. "So we go back," Lisa said. "Some of us," Greg replied. "We send teams for the immediate crises. But we negotiate everything else carefully. Get it in writing. Make sure the changes are permanent." "Do you trust them to honor the agreement?" Tyler asked. "No, but I trust them to need us. That is enough for now." Lisa packed her tools that evening. She would return to Council Station with a team of engineers. Her first job was saving the reactor. After that, she would redesign it properly. No more elegant inefficiency. Human engineering principles from now on. Kevin assembled a medical team. They would go to the Zenthari homeworld first, where the plague was worst. He loaded supplies and reviewed protocols. His teams would work in full protective gear, following every procedure he had written. Tyler organized a security force. They would retrain the Council's defense forces in proper threat assessment and response protocols. No more reactive security. Humans planned for the worst and prevented it. Nicole began mapping the broken trade networks. It would take months to rebuild the trust and relationships she had spent years creating. But she would do it. Greg prepared for the diplomatic battle ahead. Getting the agreement was one thing. Implementing it would be harder. Many species would resist. But he was ready. Before they left Earth, the group met one final time. Greg raised a glass. To returning, not as we left, but as we should have been from the start. The others raised their glasses. To returning. The human ships entered Council space a week later. Danny Foster nearly cried with relief when Lisa Chen walked into the reactor control room. The fusion core was hours from critical failure. Lisa did not waste time on greetings. She went straight to the controls and started working. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. She knew these systems better than anyone. "I simplified your modifications," Danny admitted. "I thought they were too complex." "I know. I have been watching the data remotely. You nearly killed everyone." "I'm sorry." Lisa glanced at him. "You did not know better. The Zenthari education system teaches elegant design. Earth teaches survival design. Both have value, but for critical systems, survival wins." She worked in silence for 3 hours. Slowly, the reactor stabilized. Danny watched, taking notes, asking questions. Lisa answered patiently. She was angry at the Council leadership, not at the engineers trying to learn. On the Zenthari homeworld, Kevin Park and his team entered the quarantine zones. The local doctors watched nervously as humans walked into areas they feared to approach. Kevin found patients abandoned in isolation wards. They were sick, frightened, and alone. He sat with them, held their hands, explained their treatment. He showed the Zenthari doctors that protective gear and proper procedures made the work safe. "You are not afraid?" a young Zenthari doctor asked. "I am terrified," Kevin replied. "Every time. But fear is not permission to abandon patients. We control the fear. We do the work anyway." Slowly, the Zenthari doctors began joining him. With human guidance, they entered the contaminated zones. Together, they started containing the outbreak. Tyler Brooks stood before the assembled security forces and did not smile. "Your old protocols are garbage," he said bluntly. "They assume threats are rare and predictable. They assume enemies will be obvious and attack frontally. Those assumptions will get you killed." He pulled up data. "In the 4 months since I left, pirate attacks increased 200%. Why? Because you made yourselves predictable. Pirates are not stupid. They study their targets. Your simplified patrol schedules made you easy to avoid." A Threll officer objected. "Human protocols were too complex. Too many ships, too much fuel, too much effort. And how much effort does it take to recover from a pirate attack? How many ships have you lost? How many lives?" The room fell silent. "Security is not about efficiency. It is about prevention. We will retrain all of you in threat assessment, patrol randomization, and rapid response. You will learn to think like predators, so you can stop them. The training began immediately. It was exhausting and humbling. But the security forces learned. Back on Council Station, Ambassador Thelkara approached Greg Morrison in the corridor. The Zenthari ambassador looked older, more tired. "I owe you an apology," Thelkara said. "You do." Greg agreed. "But apologizing to me is not enough. You need to apologize to your people. They are dying because you ignored the human doctor who could have saved them. I have done so. Publicly, I resigned from the council leadership." Greg was surprised. "That was not necessary." "It was. I failed my people through arrogance. I do not deserve to lead them." He paused. "Dr. Park is on my homeworld now. He is saving thousands. He did not ask for an apology first. He just started working. That is what humans do." "Why? After everything we said, everything we did, why help people who treated you so badly?" Greg thought about the question. "Because we know what it means to suffer. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. Diseases, disasters, predators, climate change. We survived by helping each other. That instinct does not turn off just because someone is cruel. We see suffering. We help. It is who we are." Thelkara nodded slowly. "I understand now why the council needed you. Not because of your technology or your strength. Because of that. Because you see the suffering we ignore." He left quietly. Greg watched him go and felt a small measure of hope. Maybe some of them really were learning. The work continued through the following weeks. Slowly, desperately, the council began stabilizing. The reactor ran safely. The plagues were contained. Security improved. Trade routes reopened, but it was fragile. Everything depended on humans now. The question was whether the council would truly change, or just wait until the crisis passed to return to old habits. Greg knew the answer would come soon enough. 6 months after humanity's return, the Galactic Council held a vote that would determine its future. Greg Morrison stood in the chamber and watched delegates file in. The room was different now. Smaller. Nearly 30 species had left the council during the crisis. Those who remained were the ones who had learned. Or at least, the ones who needed the council enough to swallow their pride. Chancellor Vorshan called the session to order. He looked diminished. Older. The crisis had broken something in him. "We vote today on the Accord of Equals," he announced. "This treaty grants humanity full voting rights and authority over critical systems. Before we vote, delegates may speak." The Mekthar representative stood first. "I vote against. This sets dangerous precedent. Today we elevate humans. Tomorrow, any minor species can demand equality. Any species that keeps our civilization running deserves equality," Krisha replied. "The humans earned this. Can you say the same?" The Mekthar delegate sat down, fuming. Others spoke. Some supported the accord out of gratitude. Some opposed it out of pride. Some abstained, unwilling to commit either way. Finally, the vote was called. The display showed the results in real time. Greg watched the numbers climb. 70% in favor, 15% against, 15% abstaining. The Accord of Equals was now council law. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some species celebrated, others walked out in protest. Greg felt neither joy nor anger, just tired relief. They had won the right to be treated as equals. Now came the harder part. Proving they deserved it. Lisa Chen returned to the infrastructure department with a full team of human engineers. She found Danny Foster still working, still struggling with systems he did not fully understand. "You stayed," Lisa said. Danny looked up, surprised. "Where else would I go? I have so much to learn." We have so much to learn." She smiled for the first time in months. "Then, let me teach you properly." Over the following weeks, Lisa ran training sessions for all the alien engineers. She explained human design philosophy not with condescension but with patience. Why do you build so many redundancies? A young Threll engineer asked. Because everything fails eventually, Lisa replied. On Earth. We learned that the hard way. Earthquakes destroy buildings, storms kill power, diseases wipe out populations. We survived by planning for disaster. But Council Space is safe. We have not had a major disaster in centuries. You had not until we left. Then you had dozens. Safety is not natural. It is built through preparation. She pulled up a schematic. Look at this cooling system. You see chaos. I see insurance. If pump 1 fails, pump 2 activates. If the main line breaks, the backup reroutes. If sensors malfunction, manual overrides exist. Each redundancy adds cost and complexity, but it also adds survival. Slowly, the alien engineers began understanding. They started designing with failure in mind, building systems that could survive catastrophe. In the medical center, Kevin Park worked alongside Dr. Veltran to reorganize disease response protocols. The alien doctor had learned humility through the plague outbreak. I sent people to die because I was afraid, Dr. Veltran admitted. I sealed them in isolation and hoped the problem would resolve itself. You were not trained for crisis response, Kevin said. Your medical system assumes normal conditions. Mine assumes the worst. Teach me. Kevin did. He ran simulations where everything went wrong. Equipment failures, staff infections, supply shortages, multiple outbreaks simultaneously. The alien medical staff found it exhausting and terrifying. This is paranoid, one nurse complained. This is prepared, Kevin corrected. When the real disaster comes, you will not freeze in fear. You will follow procedures you have practiced 100 times. The training continued. Gradually, the medical staff stopped seeing protective gear as excessive and started seeing it as essential. They stopped viewing worst-case planning as paranoia and started viewing it as responsibility. Tyler Brooks rebuilt the security forces from the ground up. He was not gentle about it. You lost 17 ships in 4 months, he told the assembled officers. That is 17 crews dead because you thought security was a part-time job. He pulled up tactical displays. Security is not about reacting to threats. It is about preventing them. You need to think like criminals, like pirates, like every enemy you might face. Then you plan to stop them before they act. A senior officer objected. We cannot predict every threat. No, but you can prepare for categories of threats. Piracy, smuggling, terrorism, espionage. Each has patterns. Study those patterns. Anticipate them. Prevent them. The training was intense. Officers who could not adapt were reassigned. Those who remained learned to think proactively instead of reactively. Pirate attacks began dropping. Security improved not through more ships, but through smarter deployment. Nicole Roth faced perhaps the hardest task: rebuilding economic trust. The trade networks she had spent years creating were shattered. Species that had cooperated now viewed each other with suspicion. She started small. Personal relationships. She met with individual trade representatives, listened to their concerns, found common ground. Slowly, she rebuilt connections. Why should we trust the Threll after they attacked our shipping? A Mekthar merchant asked. Because they attacked when there was no mediation, Nicole replied. When disputes had no peaceful resolution. That changes now. You have my word. Your word means nothing if the council ignores you again. Nicole pulled out the Accord of Equals. We have voting authority now. We can enforce trade agreements. We can sanction violators. We can protect honest merchants. Give me a chance to prove it. Gradually, trade resumed. Not to previous levels, not immediately. But it began flowing again. Greg Morrison took his position as senior human ambassador with a clear understanding of his role. He was not there to dominate but to balance. When species pushed for advantage, he pushed back. When they needed help, he provided it. When they made mistakes, he corrected them without cruelty. One day, Ambassador Krisha approached him in the corridor. "How do you do it?" she asked. "Do what?" "Lead without ego. Help without demanding gratitude. Correct without condescending. I have watched you for months. You have every right to be vindictive, but you are not." Greg considered the question. Vindictiveness is expensive. It costs energy better spent on solutions. The council hurt us, yes. But staying angry about it helps no one. Is that human philosophy? It is survivor philosophy. Earth taught us that holding grudges is a luxury. When you are busy trying to survive, you cannot afford hate. You focus on problems, solutions, cooperation. Krisha nodded slowly. "We have much to learn from your world, and we have much to learn from yours. That is what partnership means." The months passed. The council stabilized. Member species began returning, having seen the improvements. New species applied for membership, attracted by the reformed structure. Chancellor Vorshan stepped down after 1 year, as he had promised. The new council leadership was a coalition. Krisha, representing the Kvalesh, a Threll admiral who had embraced human security methods, and Nicole Roth representing humanity. It was an imperfect government, but it was better. Decisions were made collaboratively. Expertise was valued regardless of species. Problems were addressed before they became crises. Lisa sat in the reactor control room one evening, watching systems run smoothly. Danny worked beside her, now fully trained in human engineering principles. "It runs perfectly now," Danny said. "I cannot believe how unstable it was before." "It ran perfectly before too," Lisa replied. "You just could not see it. I was constantly preventing problems that never became visible. That is the difference, is it not? Alien engineering prevents visible problems. Human engineering prevents invisible ones." "Exactly. We learn to see danger before it arrives." In the medical center, Kevin trained a new generation of doctors. Young aliens from a dozen species learned human protocols. They practiced in simulations, drilling worst-case scenarios until they became second nature. Dr. Veltran watched the training with satisfaction. "I was so certain we knew better," he admitted to Kevin. "We had advanced medicine, sophisticated treatments, elegant theories. But we forgot that medicine is not just about curing disease. It is about preventing it." "Your medicine is still advanced," Kevin said. "You just needed to combine it with preparation." "Human paranoia," Kevin smiled. "We prefer to call it prudence." Tyler observed security patrols from the command center. The new officers deployed in unpredictable patterns, monitored threat indicators constantly, and responded to potential problems before they escalated. Pirate attacks had dropped to historic lows. "They are learning," his deputy said. "Some of them," Tyler replied. "Others are just following orders without understanding why. Those will fail when faced with something unexpected. So we train harder, always." 1 year after humanity's return, Greg stood in the same conference room in Geneva where the negotiations had happened. The council leadership had requested a review meeting. Krisha presented data. Infrastructure failures are down 90%, disease outbreaks contained within days instead of weeks, security incidents decreased 70%, economic activity has recovered to 80% of pre-crisis levels, and is still growing. The Threll Admiral added his report. Member species satisfaction is at record highs. Fewer conflicts, better services, more opportunities. Species are actually competing to join the council now. Nicole showed trade data. Networks are not just recovered, but expanded. We have established trade relationships with 16 species that were previously isolated. Everyone benefits. Greg listened, and felt cautiously optimistic. This is good progress. But we cannot become complacent. The moment we stop preparing for disasters is the moment disasters return. Spoken like a true deathworlder, Krisha said with a smile. Spoken like someone who remembers where we came from. That evening, Greg received a transmission from a distant colony. A minor species called the Pelthrin requested human advisors to help redesign their infrastructure. They had heard about council improvements and wanted the same for their people. Greg approved the request. He assigned a team of engineers led by one of Lisa's students, a human named Sarah Kim, who had spent 5 years on Council Station. The work continued, not for glory or recognition, not even for gratitude. The work continued because it mattered, because civilizations were fragile and required constant maintenance, because people suffered when systems failed, and humans could not ignore suffering. Greg thought about the journey that had brought them here. The years of dismissal and frustration, the painful decision to leave, the desperate return, the hard-won equality. It had cost them everything. Energy, dignity, patience, hope. Some humans had left the Council service permanently, too hurt to return. Others had come back but carried scars, yet here they were. Equal partners in a galactic civilization. Their methods were now standard. Their caution was now valued. Their expertise was now respected. Was it worth it? Greg looked at the data showing lives saved, disasters prevented, conflicts avoided. He thought about the young aliens learning human protocols, genuinely wanting to understand. He thought about species working together instead of competing. Yes, it was worth it. A message arrived from Lisa. Minor fluctuation in the eastern sector cooling system. Already corrected. See you tomorrow. Greg smiled. Even after everything, Lisa was still monitoring systems late at night, still preventing problems before they became visible. That was what humans did. They saw the cracks before the collapse. They fixed problems before disasters. They helped because helping was who they were. The Galactic Council had learned a hard lesson. Civilization was not built on the strength of the powerful, but on the dedication of those who maintained it. The engineers who kept systems running, the doctors who prevented plagues, the security officers who stopped threats, the mediators who prevented conflicts, the coordinators who made everything work. For centuries, those people had been invisible, taken for granted, dismissed as junior partners doing simple work. Then they left, and in their absence, the truth became impossible to ignore. The Council did not survive because of its powerful founders. It survived because of the quiet competence of those who did the unglamorous work. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had not demanded submission or tribute. They had simply left, and their absence spoke louder than any argument. Now they had returned, not as saviors or overlords, just as partners, equals, and the galaxy was better for it. Greg closed his datapad and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human teams were working, fixing reactors, treating patients, training security forces, negotiating trade agreements, building systems that would save lives. The work was never done, but that was fine. Humans were built for persistence. Earth had taught them that survival was not a destination but a constant effort. The Galactic Council had learned that lesson the hard way. They would not forget again.